While the right mindset provides the foundation for professional investigation, it must be supported by strong analytical and technical skills. Impartiality, skepticism, and patience guide an investigator's thinking, but it is analytical ability that transforms information into reliable findings. An investigator may collect hundreds of documents, interview numerous witnesses, and review countless records, but without the ability to analyze, connect, and interpret that information, the investigation cannot reach a sound conclusion. Professional investigators are, above all, problem solvers. They gather facts from many different sources, identify meaningful patterns, distinguish relevant information from background noise, and develop logical conclusions that are supported by evidence. This requires much more than simply following procedures. It demands careful observation, disciplined reasoning, and the flexibility to adapt when an investigation becomes more complex than originally anticipated. One of the most valuable analytical skills is attention to detail. Successful investigations are often determined not by dramatic discoveries, but by small pieces of information that others overlook. A single timestamp, an overlooked email, an inconsistency between two witness statements, or a missing document may completely change the direction of an investigation. Experienced investigators therefore develop the habit of examining evidence carefully and resisting the temptation to dismiss information simply because it appears insignificant. They understand that important discoveries are frequently hidden within minor details. This level of attention requires patience, discipline, and tenacity. Even after all obvious leads have been exhausted, skilled investigators often revisit the evidence with fresh eyes, asking themselves whether they missed something during the first review. Attention to detail also extends beyond documents. During interviews and workplace observations, investigators pay close attention to subtle behaviors, inconsistencies, and contextual information. While body language should never be interpreted as proof of deception, changes in posture, hesitation, emotional responses, or inconsistencies between verbal and nonverbal communication may indicate areas that deserve further exploration. Effective observation is not about making assumptions, it is about recognizing details that warrant additional inquiry. Equally important is the ability to apply logical reasoning. Every investigation seeks to answer one fundamental question: what most likely happened? The answer cannot be based on intuition or personal opinion. Instead, it must be derived through logical analysis of the available evidence. Investigators use both deductive and inductive reasoning throughout their work. Deductive reasoning begins with established facts or accepted principles and determines what conclusions must logically follow. Inductive reasoning works in the opposite direction. It begins with specific observations and uses them to determine what explanation is most likely. Since workplace investigations examine events that have already occurred, investigators rely heavily on inductive reasoning, recognizing that conclusions are based on probability rather than absolute certainty. Logical reasoning also requires investigators to distinguish between correlation and causation. Two events occurring together do not necessarily mean that one caused the other. For example, discovering that an employee was present during an incident does not automatically establish responsibility. Likewise, unusual computer activity does not necessarily indicate malicious intent. Professional investigators carefully examine whether the available evidence actually demonstrates a causal relationship before drawing conclusions. As evidence accumulates, investigators gradually construct a coherent narrative that explains how the facts fit together. Every conclusion should follow logically from the evidence presented, allowing another investigator or even a court or tribunal to understand exactly how the findings were reached. A well-written investigation report is therefore more than a collection of facts, it is a logical explanation showing how each piece of evidence contributes to the overall conclusion. Another essential competency is problem solving. Real investigations rarely proceed in a straight line. Witnesses become unavailable, documents cannot be located, evidence conflicts, and unexpected developments frequently require investigators to revise their approach. Rather than becoming discouraged, professional investigators adapt. Adaptability means viewing obstacles as investigative challenges rather than dead ends. When one source of information becomes unavailable, investigators identify alternative sources. When one witness cannot answer a question, they seek corroboration elsewhere. When evidence appears inconsistent, they continue investigating until the inconsistency is understood, rather than ignored. Problem solving also requires creativity. Creativity in investigation does not mean making assumptions or taking shortcuts. Instead, it means developing innovative yet evidence-based approaches to obtaining information. For example, if direct witnesses cannot be identified, investigators may use techniques such as snowball sampling, asking existing witnesses to identify others who may possess relevant information. By gradually expanding the network of interviews, investigators often discover evidence that would otherwise remain hidden. Modern investigators also leverage technology to strengthen analytical thinking. Digital case management systems, evidence databases, timeline software, and link analysis tools help investigators organize complex information, visualize relationships, and identify patterns that would be difficult to recognize manually. These technologies do not replace professional judgment, but they significantly enhance an investigator's ability to manage large volumes of information efficiently and accurately. As workplace investigations increasingly involve digital communications, electronic records, surveillance data, and extensive documentation, the ability to analyze complex information has become more important than ever. Investigators must be capable of organizing large datasets, identifying meaningful relationships, and extracting reliable conclusions without becoming overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information. Ultimately, analytical and technical skills transform evidence into understanding. Attention to detail ensures that critical facts are not overlooked. Logical reasoning connects those facts into coherent and defensible conclusions. Problem solving enables investigators to overcome obstacles and adapt to changing circumstances. Combined with the professional mindsets discussed earlier, these competencies allow investigators to conduct thorough, objective, and evidence-based investigations that can withstand scrutiny and support fair organizational decision-making.